This is Ben Rossiter, the creator of Document Gallery, and today I want to spend just a few minutes discussing how to use Document Gallery and get the most out of it. So you'll see here I've only got a very stripped down WordPress install with one of the default plugins and then Document Gallery. So the first important thing to note is that Document Gallery has some settings that you can configure to better meet your needs. And so those settings can obviously be accessed via the settings button right here. But then they can also be accessed through settings and then Document Gallery. So depending on what page you're on within the WordPress dashboard, it may be easier to get to it through one way or the other. They both go to the same place. So when we get to Document Gallery settings, we have a bunch of different options we can look at. This first section up here lists all of the different attributes you can pass to the Document Gallery shortcode. And so you've got every possibility here, and you can set a default value for it. These have the default values, but they can all be changed. So if, for example, I don't want to generate thumbnails with each of the images, but just use a default like PDF image, for example, then I can disable that. But I do want fancy icons, so I'm going to leave that on. You can also, if you want images to be included when Document Gallery is searching for attachments to use, then you can enable that as well. And then there are lots of other options that you can look at, and all of these are documented in the installation tab of the Document Gallery website. So down here we have all of the different ways that Document Gallery can generate thumbnails depending on what type of file we're working with. So you'll see by default 3 of these are enabled, and then Google Drive Viewer is disabled. And it's disabled because right now I'm on a private server that doesn't have access to the outside world. And so Document Gallery detects that and realizes that it won't be able to pass off these files to Google, and so it disables this for me. You would see the same behavior for GoScript or iMagick if they weren't enabled on your server. It's also worth noting that for both GoScript and iMagick, if you do not have, if these are disabled, you'll probably want to speak with your hosting provider to see whether that's something that they can fix for you or whether you're just going to have to find a way around it. Or just not use that particular generation method. You've also got max thumbnail dimensions, so if you want your thumbnails to be bigger or smaller, you can change this value. You should also note that if you are going to change the thumbnail dimensions, you'll need to modify the CSS that is used when rendering the gallery, because the CSS in its default state, we can look real quick, you've got a size limitation. So each of your icons is only going to be 89 pixels wide, no matter what. Which means if you want it to be bigger, you're going to have to extend this CSS first. And so that's what this is for. You can do whatever you want here, and it'll be used in conjunction with the existing style sheets. We'll also look at the logging tab real quick. And we see we've already got some log entries here. A lot of these are just general debugging things that are only generated when we're in debug mode, which I am currently. You'll also notice that you can see exactly which attachment we generated thumbnails for, all kinds of very specific details about your thumbnail generation methods if that's something that you're curious about. We've also got the Advanced tab where you can enable or disable logging. So this is by default actually disabled. I enabled it prior to filming this. And you can also set where your GoScript executable is located. So for me, it's in user bin GoScript or GS. For you, it might be somewhere else. Generally, you won't have to mess with this because Document Gallery does a pretty good job of finding it, but it's there if you need it. And then finally, thumbnail management, which lists all of the existing thumbnails that are in the system. So I'm actually going to delete these real quick because it will help with the next demo that I'm about to do. So you'll see I deleted them, now they're gone. Which means we purged all of the existing thumbnails. So if we view any gallery, we're going to have to generate new thumbnails, which is what I want to show you. So if we go to this sample page that I have set up, you'll see all I've got here is the raw document gallery. What that does is it means that will only include within the gallery any attachment that is uploaded to this page. So you see right here, we're not looking at all of the media items, which is the default value. We're in uploaded to this page. And so it'll take all of these and generate thumbnails based on them. We don't need to insert into page. This does absolutely nothing for document gallery, and it'll just end up with you having extra little links, so don't bother with that unless you want to include them as well for some other use case. This is all you need right here. So now we can see what the page looks like. And what you'll notice is that it's going to take a while to load. And the reason for this is that, as you saw before, we just cleared out all of our thumbnails, which means Document Gallery has to go through each of those and generate a new one. Now what Document Gallery does is it caches all of those values. So if we were to reload this page, like I'm going to do right now, you'll see it was almost instantaneous, whereas the first time we waited maybe 10 seconds. That's because it'll only ever generate a thumbnail one time, unless of course you purge them like I did manually. So that's a nice feature. It does mean that you'll have a little bit of delay the first time that thumbnails generate. It also will only spend a certain amount of time per page load generating, and after that you'll get default icons like this for the rest. But next time the page is loaded, it will generate more, and eventually they'll all get generated. This is to prevent your users from This is to prevent your users from waiting for 30 minutes for the entire page to load, which is not a good user experience. It's better to let them see a couple of default icons if they happen to be one of the first people to view the page. But that timeout is also configurable in the advanced settings that we saw earlier, if that's something that you want to change. So, if we go back to the page that we were looking at before, there are lots of attributes you can add. One of them that creates a very visible change is descriptions. So by default, that's false. If we want to see the descriptions for the attachments, we can do that. And that's going to look like this. So you'll see you've got the same icons we saw before with their title below them. But then off to the right, we've got the text in the descriptions. So obviously in this case, the text is not particularly useful. But if you wanted to, for example, describe the document, give a couple of sentences, that could be done very easily. In fact, let's see. Never mind. So, another useful attribute that we can use, if you so choose, is the IDs value. Now what this does is it says, I don't want you to automatically find attachments on this page. I want you to instead use these specific IDs that I give you that each represent an attachment. So if you want to get the ID for a specific attachment, all you have to do, click on that attachment, select attachment page, and look at this value right here. That's your ID. So you're going to take that and put it in. So let's grab a couple of them. That one's 33, and this one is 32. So we'll do those two. We've got runtime measurements and no height. And you'll notice you don't need quotes around it because we can't put spaces here anyway. You could also write it this way if you like. It doesn't make a difference. So now we'll preview. We should get two icons, and we do. So we see we have the runtime measurements and the no height virtualized cloud without the virtualization. So there we go. And that's useful if you have very specific lists that you want to include, and especially if you want to have multiple galleries on a given page. This will allow you to do that. So I think that's about all the time I have. One last thing I would show you is just that this is what it looks like with lots more icons. You can individually delete ones if you think that something went wrong with that particular generation of the icon and let it retry. You can also see exactly what went wrong if you get an error. In this case, we don't really have any errors to see, but if we did, we could enable or disable them with these buttons and see whichever type of log entry we wanted to see. So I think that about wraps up my review of Document Gallery. I hope that was helpful. Please do feel free to go to the Document Gallery website, wordpress.org/plugins/document-gallery. And all of what I've discussed and much more is documented on the installation tab. Much more than you could ever need. There's a lot of documentation for developers if you're interested in extending the plugin, adding additional ways to generate thumbnails, things of that nature. We've also got a very active support forum, and I and a couple of other developers are very good at responding to any questions that might exist. And then, of course, if you like Document Gallery and it has been helpful, don't hesitate to give us a review, preferably 5 stars. We would really appreciate it. Thank you, and have